After its unfortunate launch fiasco, we're here with Vrider SBK. Since coming out at the wrong price, it's had a price fix and it had a bunch of issues at release, including blurry visuals and washed out colors. But today, I'm going to be going through my thoughts after playing it for the last couple of days for a couple of hours, including gameplay, visuals, haptics, feature set, the lot. Before we get into this, only 25% you are subs to the channel, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members who are all on screen right now. With that being said, let's take a look at Vrider SBK. For a bit of context, I am what I'd call a fairly experienced racing sim and game enjoyer. I'm really not incredibly talented at them. I'm bang average or even below average, but I've played about 250 hours of Gran Turismo, mostly in VR. I have about 200 hours across the F1 games, and I also have a lot of time playing BeamNG, Assetto Corsa, and I've dabbled in iRacing for quite a short time, admittedly. So when heading into Vrider, I was a little bit scared that a few features about this game would uproot it a bit. Namely, its motion controls, since the game is a superbike racing game with a big focus for those motion controls for actually steering the bike itself. Luckily, I can say for the most part, the motion controls here do feel difficult at first, and there is a real learning curve, but you can get the hang of them. Anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, so the main gist of Vrider SBK is that you're in the SBK League, and I've never watched Superbike Racing or MotoGP, they're just not my sort of racing leagues, but this is an officially licensed racing game for SBK. The entire grid of 22 drivers is here. All of the constructors are here as well with their own bikes and liveries, and I think 12 of the tracks are here as well, recreated quite accurately. That's what will kick things off. How do the tracks, how do the bikes, how does everything look? Well, visually here on PSVR2, I didn't play the game before the update, so I don't know what it looked like then, but right now, it looks pretty good. There is some aliasing in the middle to far distance still, but from what I heard, this was much worse in the past. But I'd say what you're seeing on screen right now is quite representative of what it looks like in the headset. Details aren't completely sparse. There are some people in the crowds waving flags and setting off flares, which is a very nice touch. However, a couple of visual details here aren't quite up to par with other racing games in terms of crowd density, especially between sessions. Whether you're qualifying or actually in the race, the crowd will look the same, which isn't a big deal breaker. It's just a small thing for immersion in games like Gran Turismo. If you're in qualifying or time trial, there'll be a couple of people in the stands, but as soon as a race kicks in, those stands will be packed. Just a little thing to add to the immersion that I don't think is here from what I've noticed, but overall, I love the addition of the flares and the flags. That's great to see. One thing people complained about in the past was that the game was quite washed out, but now it's looking vibrant on PSVR2. The colors pop fairly well, but overall don't expect some AAA quality here. You can tell this game has been built for standalone and then ported over, but it's by no means a bad port, at least now. Maybe at launch it was a bit rough, but they've done a lot of work here. From what I can tell though, the game is reprojected, which I didn't really expect. I find it a little bit harder to notice when a game is reprojected when it's a racing game though. For example, GT7 is reprojected, but it's one of the better games for it because you're never really smooth turning. That's when reprojection really kicks in for me, is when I use the right stick to smooth turn and say Horizon Call the Mountain, and you see that ghosting. For a game like GT7 where you're very much focused forwards, you really don't see it that much, and it's the same here for Vrider. However, it does make watching in spectator mode a little bit rough. Again, same with GT7. Because of the reprojection, when something is going horizontally past you, you see that after image. So spectator mode is, a little bit rough because of that, and I'm fairly sure this game does run 60 to 120 reprojected. But again, when you're on the bike, it feels pretty good. There are haptics in the controllers here, for gear changes, for example, and for if you barrel it into the armco, but I didn't notice any use of adaptive triggers or head haptics, I must say. For me, adaptive triggers are really useful in racing games, so I kind of wish that we'd have them here, for making the brake pedal, or should I say the brake trigger, I guess, a little bit easier to make precise movements on. The throttle less so, but I would have loved to have seen the adaptive triggers used for the brake. Overall, visually, pretty good, and feature set, decent as well, and I believe dynamic foveated rendering is being used now. Hence why close-up things do look really sharp, and even with the aliasing in the distance, it's not a muddy look, it's more just a little bit shimmery. Right, now let's come back to motion controls, because that's how you control each of the bikes. Instead of turning by pushing your hands away from each other, you instead move them up or down, and this does feel quite immersive, even though I imagine this isn't how you do it in real life, because you're really doing it horizontally on a real bike. But again, I've never driven one, so I don't know. But the motion controls do feel accurate to what you're doing. Initially, I was absolutely awful. I don't think I found a racing game that I was worse at. But now I can actually put together some okay lap times. And of course, it's not going to be as precise as an analog stick or a steering wheel. but they've taken a swing at doing something a bit more immersive in terms of your full body controls, and I can really appreciate that effort, and for the most part, it does work pretty well. Again, it can make things a little bit less competitive just because that input method is less precise, but if you master that learning curve, I'm sure you can really get some fast times and be competitive. As for the throttle, you can either use the trigger or there is a twisting method as well, which I didn't really like, but you can put it on if you want, like a real bike's throttle. The game has 5 modes, including hot laps, endurance, which basically is hot laps, but you have 5 laps to go as fast as possible, tournaments, ghost challenge, and quick race. So there's a fair bit to do here. My favourite were quick race and tournament for single player, quick race when I wanted to jump into something fast and just get out on track against other drivers, which has the options for qualifying as well, which is much appreciated. I love to see that here. And qualifying also includes the other drivers, or riders should I say, on track with you at the same time, which is quite immersive. And then you can go into your race of up to 10 laps with up to 22 other riders to battle it out. And seeing them all on the grid is honestly a really special feeling. There are multiple difficulty options as well depending on how proficient you are with your bike. There's also multiplayer, but I haven't really managed to find a lobby yet. I haven't been able to go on at peak times in the evening on the weekend though, which is probably when people would most likely be on. But so far, yeah, not too much luck with that, but I imagine online this game is pretty damn fun, because there's either ghosted multiplayer PvP or full contact PvP. And qualifying is also in online as well, which is really cool to see. Collisions are also modelled, as bikes can also cause a real stack up, but the AI sometimes trips over itself during this. But for the most part, they're pretty good. Oh my god, oh my god! Oh my god, I've caused an incident. And if you pull off a really abrupt move, like trying to stop the bike at a very fast speed and turning abruptly, you will also fall off and you'll see your bike go flying off into the distance, which is really cool. There are some immersive features you can turn on or off as well, such as a helmet cam, which basically puts that visor over your vision, and also has dirt accumulation as you ride, which is quite a neat feature. I did turn both of these off eventually, just for that clarity of you guys watching the footage, but those options can be quite immersive if you want to really feel like you're there. Lastly, I want to talk circuits and how accurate they are. Again, there are 12 in total, all of them from the actual calendar, I believe, but I'm going to be tackling 2 that I'm most familiar with in terms of their portrayal in the game. And those 2 circuits are Imola and Barcelona. Now, Barcelona, we have a very one-to-one representation of the real thing because GT7 has a version of Barcelona that is actually scanned from the real track. So it's the real laser scan telemetry put into the game. And I'd say Vrider, compared to that, gets it mostly right. Certain sections of the track feel a little bit off in terms of camber and maybe width, but for the most part, for those 2 circuits that I'm really familiar with, they feel almost spot on. And racing around these in a new perspective on a bike really has something to it. And the variety of circuits does give you a lot of replay value to come back and try and beat your best times. Lastly, I gotta address the elephant in the room. You don't have any arms in this game, and from the trailers that really annoyed me. I was like, why don't we have arms? That's kind of needed for immersion in a game like this, but after playing it for a bit, honestly, you kind of just fill in the gaps in your mind, and to keep your vision as clear as possible, it's kind of nice not having arms, if that makes sense. I'd still like the option, because for immersion purposes of feeling your body there, that would be really cool, but it's not as big of a problem as I thought, and I can live with it. Overall, I'm enjoying Vrider SBK so far. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below if you have bought it for the £30 price tag that it's got. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.